Well, good morning. It's me, Robert Phoenix, and I am here for the Astro Weather today, and it is 8:30. And I apologize. We're a little late today, and there we go. We can see the comments. And welcome, welcome, welcome. Hola, hola, hola. There we go. There it is. All right. Um, Thanks for being here. I had a late client last night. Look at me. I got to straighten my shit out here. Get it together, Robert. Get it together. Yeah, I had a late client last night, so invariably you got to make up for it somewhere, right? So unfortunately, the somewhere is here, and all 27 of you who are watching, thanks for being here. Wow, how are the retrogrades treating you? I've had a few retrograde moments over the last 24 hours that have been interesting to say the least, and we'll get into it today. There we go, right there. Let's start right there. So I think the big news today is the Moon Saturn conjunction. So we're coming off that full moon, and the Moon Saturn is arid and dry, and it's all business. And I say all business, not business in the sense that you're out to look at your bottom line profit, all the things that go along with business. Although there can be some of that. The Pisces moon wants to express and emote, and conjunction with Saturn or conjuncting with Saturn makes that a bit more difficult. Today is definitely a day that I would promote sobriety today. Like, try to stay lucid today, because on the other side of all of that, over here we have Mars in the background, Mercury in the background, and so we're dealing with this kind of intense pull again with Mars to get things done. That's the other part of this too. Like with Mars and Virgo and opposing Moon Saturn, you could flatten people's feelings today with this urgent sense of expediency and efficiency and everything that goes along with Mars and Virgo. And I think the challenging part is hitting speed bumps and running into people whose feelings that theoretically you've hurt over the course of the day, or maybe the last 24 hours, or the last week, since we're dealing with some of these retrogrades. And how do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with, sorry, I don't have time for this? um I think we all have ways of trying to cope. And by the way, coping in this world is very, very difficult. This is a little bit of an aside, but I've been watching the unemployment numbers, and I've been hearing stories about like layoffs going on across all these different uh, work sectors. And, that in and of itself, with Mars and Virgo opposing Moon, opposing Saturn, all the things that Moon Saturn is, what you're supposed to be doing theoretically for your family, right? Saturn is providing, Moon is security. And then on the other side, you've got Mercury, Mars. And if you're in a position where you're not working, uh, this opposition can be very, very difficult, extremely difficult. The amount of pressure that you would put on yourself is, um, it could be paralytic in some ways, right? The other side of this is to deal with feelings of guilt. Let's say you are working. Let's say you are making a reasonable wage, even though you're probably having to work harder, do work for more than one person. Over there, Moon, Saturn, people will let you know how they're feeling and what they're not doing, and how they're not being represented in the workforce, or how their talents aren't being represented. So it's a real balancing act today in terms of getting things done. And Virgo is not a very emotional sign. Pisces is, although with Saturn there, it kind of puts the emotions through the ringer. I would say on a collective level or on a social level, victims are in the headlines today. Today is a V for Victim Day, and again, this is the other side of it. This is the other side of the opposition. Do you want to play the role in subtly enabling a victim in some ways? Like, do you want to do that, or being pulled along with the tide of other people? Say, oh, come on, isn't this terrible? Don't you feel sorry for this person? I feel like you kind of have to pick and choose. Here's what I'll say: don't get caught up in the swamp. Don't get caught up in the swamp and the bog of trying to fix something for somebody else. I think it's fair to recognize that people do have feelings and people do need to be kind of recognized and seen or heard. But after that, it's not your job, right? It is not your job. If you have important relationships or connections and you want to keep them intact, that's a different story, right? So this is not a day for casual interventions by any means. I think that one of the things that we here in this realm are going to have to really wrap our heads around is the notion of time. And we all think that time is, at some point, is kind of limitless, whether you're young or whether we think that this story is going to continue to go on forever and ever. It's not, right? We're closing the curtains on a lot of different parts of our so-called society. And in a lot of ways, time does become an issue. So I talked about this a couple days ago. We still have that Mars Jupiter trine. You are rewarded for your work. You're rewarded for your effort. Don't don't get distracted and don't get pulled out of that by drama and what other people are desperately trying to get you to understand about how they're feeling. Just go there, tip your cap, tell them you get it, and then politely move on. Right? Just politely move on, because if you don't, I think you'll miss this opportunity of having reasonable and uh, rewarding work done. Right? So I know we're in Leo, and Leo's about play and fun, and I get all that. But with all this Virgo in the air, it's like, work first, play later. We have Palace in Virgo. I would say, from again a collective space, as Mercury gets closer to Pallas, that I think we're going to have more insight into health and what's been going on with our bodies, specifically what we've been putting in them, if you know what I mean. And I think some of the news is not going to be good. So this is all about also health trends moving forward, and how do you stay healthy? How do you stay alive? And why do you stay alive? I mean, that's the other part of all of this. Like, if you're going to be in the game, why are you in the games? You have to define your own terms. Over here, people want to define the terms for you. It's their terms. It's their needs. So don't get bogged down. Keep your head down and just take advantage of momentum and opportunity. If it's not there, it will be, um, whatever that is for you. In Virgo, it's all about something meaningful, right? Virgo is the sign of Dharma. The sixth house is dharmic, and we have Pluto over here today in the sixth house for the chart. And Jupiter is moving into more of a trine with Pluto. What's interesting here about Uranus is, which is about to go. Let me give me a second here. Let me just zoom in. So Uranus is about to go retrograde, and to me, that's really in alignment with what's happening with BRICS, because BRICS is going to. Let me zoom in. Whoops, my bad. BRICS is going to announce its big plan right? They're going for like a gold backed. Think about this. China has been hoarding gold. India has been hoarding gold. South Africa, you have to ask yourself, why the fuck is South Africa in BRICS? I'll tell you why. They got gold. We're looking at a new gold based monetary system that theoretically will displace the not gold backed fiat system. Now, are the same people behind it? No, well, that's a whole other discussion. Uh, what else do we have here? Venus is definitely on the retrograde. The good thing about Venus retrograde is that the further it drifts back, the closer it gets into a nice orb with Chiron. So this retrograde motion can be actually pretty healing with some of your relationships. And the thing about Chiron and Aries, Aries in general, which we've talked about, Aries just does not like to say I'm sorry or apologize. But with Chiron and Aries, it's not a sign of weakness, especially with Venus retrograde. We'll get into that as Venus continues its slow crawl backwards and into that space with Chiron, where I think a lot of wounds from the past can be sutured and sealed up, and 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 I think for a lot of us, look, there's some things that you just can't solve, and it's just the way it is, right? Sometimes you just take an L on certain things, and you have to move on. But there are other things that you can resolve, and they're important to resolve because how life works is that every moment and every choice evolves out of moments and choices we've previously made and how we've handled situations with certain people, and those all define our path moving forward. And I guess if you're somebody who's just a steamroller, it doesn't really matter, but most people aren't, and most people are cognizant of their own expenditure of energy and how it impacts others. So this Venus retrograde, I think, ultimately will be really, really good. And it could result in the opening or the reopening of wounds as it gets closer to like 19. And it goes retrograde, it goes back to 12, it stations at 12, and it moves forward again. I think September 2nd, if I'm not mistaken, Venus begins to move forward. Um, I have to check that. I think it's around that time. But then you want to really look at that direct motion of Venus to come in and really resolve the sort of the past wound or the past pain or the heartache, right? And that's going to be a really interesting time with that trine with Chiron. So I think a lot of good can actually come out of Venus retrograde, and especially with when it's in Leo, you got to lay down your pride. Lay down your pride, and you don't have to get on all fours, but lay down your pride, and when it's appropriate, admit where you were wrong, and just say, hey, look, my bad, and see what kind of effect it has on relationships. It's going to be good, be a good effect. Um, Aging is part of the discussion today out there in the world. Aging, late life care, all part of the Moon-Saturn conjunction in Pisces. Also, another thing to look out for today is the border drugs and fentanyl. It's, that'll be a big issue today. So keep your eyes out for that. All right, there's your Astro weather for today. Now we do have the star of the day, and I know I've done this chart many times before, but there's stars and then there's stars. So today's star of the day is none other than one Thomas Brady. And the thing I love about Brady's chart is how it just plays out astrologically. You can see the Sun Saturn conjunction. I mean, the guy played well into his 40s. I mean, that is indicative of the longevity of a Sun Saturn conjunction. And Part of it is the fact that he just wants to compete and be the best and be the best and be the best. He's got a fiercely competitive spirit. He's got Moon in Aries. What's interesting about, I tell you, when men have Moon in Aries, they wind up hanging out with powerful women, right? And Giselle Bundchen is a powerful woman. I think she's a Cancer, if I'm not mistaken. S- So even though he doesn't have the Moon in Cancer, you can see that right here with the Moon in the seventh house, he wound up having an LTR marriage with a Cancer woman, right? So it's kind of interesting how that works. He's also got a yod, and it's kind of an unusual yod with Mercury and Uranus and resolving itself over here with this Moon in Aries. And it feels to me like that kind of plays into the hey, I'm not retiring story. Although he also had the Saturn opposition at 44, which we talked about. And after he won that Super Bowl with Tampa, he should have just tapped out. He should have tapped out, Tommy. Should have tapped out. But he had a big contract and he wanted to do it again and again and again. Pluto on his ascendant. He's obsessed, right? He is obsessed about winning. He's obsessed about being considered great. He has a really interesting chart, and he has kind of greatness built into his chart. You know, he's got Mars trine Pluto in his chart. That's a really intense and powerful transit or aspect, rather. And he has Mars in the ninth house. And the ninth house is big sports, outdoor sports, football, golf, equestrian, right? All the stuff that is played out there. Baseball is a ninth house sport. Now they're pastimes, but also things like pinochle and bridge and pickleball and cornhole. They're all pastimes too, but they're not played out in these large open areas, which are very ninth housey, right? So you can just tell that he is just an absolute intense competitor with that Mars Pluto trine. Sun Pluto sextile, Pluto on the ascendant. Of course, he's a pretty boy with Libra rising. That's what, ladies and gentlemen, that's what a Libra rising male can look like. And then his sun, of course, is just kind of bleeding right into the ascendant there. So uh, I think what's interesting about Brady is that I don't think there's a lot of hidden agenda with Tom Brady. Pretty much what you see is what you get. And he's not a dummy, he's got Mercury in Virgo. So he's not a dummy. And on the football field, he wasn't he had a really good arm, not like a cannon. He had pretty good footwork, but he was never known for being able to run the ball. But I'll tell you what Tom Brady did extremely well is he processed information. And you have this with the Mercury Uranus sextile. And that's to me that's kind of his calling card with processing. Saturn in the 11th house, I think he could probably be really hard on his teammates. I mean, you've seen him kind of barking at people on the sideline. Bill Parcells is in Aries, so he's going to be over here. He's going to have a long-term relationship with Bill Parcells. I think Parcells is right there. He's right on his moon. And he's got lessons to learn in relationship. And relationship is his kryptonite zone. And Tom, you should have hired me. I know you're going out with Arena Shake or whatever, but you should have hired me. And you should have tapped out on that Saturn opposition. And I would say that the year that he didn't do that, this is what if you don't follow like the cycles of Saturn, and you think you're kind of and he doesn't know about this, but he thought he was a kind of above his agreements, and then he had the worst fucking year of his life. The Bucks were terrible. Giselle is banging the martial arts instructor and taking their kids to what Costa Rica, I think. Must have loved that. He had Antonio Brown dogging him, completely dogging him, making fun of him on Instagram, basically telling people that he banged Giselle Bundchen, Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But if you're Tom Brady and you're a Leo, and you got a Sun Saturn conjunction, like how do you deal with that? Good luck with that. And then he lost 35 million in FTX. Could he afford it? Yeah, more than likely. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tom Brady post football. If he had any kind of political sense about him, um, this is a guy who, if he had any political sense and any kind of desire to do that, it would be easy for him. If he, especially if he, I'll tell you, if Tom Brady had quit after the Super Bowl in Tampa, his legacy would have been sealed. He could have done anything. Now he had a few chinks in his armor, and well, we'll see what happens with Mister Thomas Brady moving forward. Very interesting chart. You can see the greatness in it. You can also see some of the flaws inside the chart, and even that Mercury Neptune square. Basically he lied. He lied to Giselle, right? That's what I talk about with the Mercury Neptune square. How do you lie though? First, you lie to yourself. He lied to himself, and then he lied to her, and then that was it. It was all over. Saturn opposition, didn't catch it, and Tom, wish you all the best. All right, thank you for being here and being a part of the Astro Weather. I apologize for being on the late side, and now I got to go because I got another show to do. 15 minutes of flame. Please don't forget my good buddy Chris over at True Him Science. Go on over there, check out what he's got for all your CBD needs. If you spend $100 or more, all you got to do is type in 15MINS, 15MINS, and you'll get free product sent your way. You got to love that. That's about it. 15 minutes of flame, OVFLAME. I'm Robert Phoenix. You take good care. We'll see you tomorrow on the Friday Forecast. Guest TBD. Bye for now.